Senator from Berkeley, Senator Grooms. I'd ask you, give the senator your attention, please.
Members of the body, after a nearly years-long investigation by the Office of Inspector General, General Lampkin released this report. It became public about 2 hours ago. It should be up on the website right now. It was the Inspector General's investigation into the Office of State Treasurer. I wanted to hit just a few things on here, but first of all, the Senate's investigatory committee and the actions of the Senate are completely justified with verification by the Inspector General of multiple violations of South Carolina law that has occurred in the Office of State Treasurer. In investigating the Office of State Treasurer, the use of mismanagement was mentioned several times, and also malfeasance, among other things. The reporting requirements that are spelled out in statute are continuing to be violated, and they have been violated. And that's what led to the $1.8 billion in errors, not being able to check fund balances and reconcile things. The Inspector General goes into detail explaining how these things are not being done. But during the investigation that really began right here in the Senate, the Inspector General quickly stumbled onto something else. He believed this investigation would take several months, but it's taken nearly a year. And one of the things that the Inspector General came across was some interesting transactions in regard to the South Carolina Election Commission. You may recall we had an election commission director resign. There were some things happening over there that were not quite right. We now have a new elections director, Mr. Conway Belanger. The General Assembly had appropriated monies for upgraded voting machines. The upgraded voting machines, the appropriations would have been available to the Election Commission in a February timeframe, but the Treasurer somehow was able to, under a master lease program, worked out with the Election Commission and facilitated by TD Bank, facilitated a master lease for new voting machines. He did so knowing that the Election Commission would be unable to make the lease payments, and also in a manner that exceeded the state appropriation by $10 million. That is an illegal appropriation. He committed this state to paying an interest rate to TD Bank the number right. To paying an interest rate to TD Bank of 213.84%. 213.84%. That was the interest rate that we were paying TD Bank. The Office of Inspector General goes on into detail, specifying the appropriate state statutes, and goes on to mention about possible malfeasance in office. The Inspector General goes on to look at the various ledger accounts within the State Treasurer's office. The State Treasurer's office will have an appropriation that would be classified to a certain area, but they routinely commingle and move around various expenses in ways that, as the Inspector General has in this report, violate government generally accepting accounting practices and governmental accounting practices, complete violations of those things. Right now, we have a Securities and Exchange Commission investigation that is still ongoing into the finances of South Carolina. And as you will take a look at this report, in addition to violation of state statutes regarding reporting requirements, in violation of state statutes in pointing to bank balances, one thing that is required is actual bank balances, that those reports be made available to the Comptroller General, the actual bank balances, with statements coming from the banks themselves. The State Treasurer's Office continues to fail to produce those reports to the Comptroller General's office, submitting his own statements of how much monies are in each of the banks. The underlying statute that South Carolina has, if a bank fails to produce that statement, the treasurer is to withdraw all funds immediately. He violates that statute too by substituting his own balances instead of what the actual bank balances are. The 42-page report goes on into great detail, also about issues with the unclaimed prize account. As you know, the unclaimed property account within the State Treasurer's Office, we'll find out that someone got mailed a check, it went somewhere else, and all of a sudden your name appears, and he's holding some money in the unclaimed property account, and there's a way of getting that money. That account exceeds over $1 billion. There are multiple employees that are charged expenses to the State Treasurer's Office against monies in the unclaimed property account. Many of those employees have nothing to do with the unclaimed property account. And actually, the unclaimed property account is managed by an outside auditor, also in violation of some of the statutes in here, and the way that fees are charged. Fees are charged in a manner by the auditing company that manages the unclaimed property account, that if there aren't sufficient funds available that are appropriated or at the Treasurer's Office, then the invoices are rolled over and rolled over and rolled over, and when properties are then sold or claimed, they're charged against the fees that are owed. That's also in violation of statutes and other policies. The conclusion, the Office of Inspector General, they exist to take a look for waste, fraud, and abuse. And anytime they find something that rises to possible criminal activity, they are then charged in making referrals to the governor and to respective law enforcement agencies. And the conclusion of the report, the Inspector General lets us know that the Inspector General's office has identified instances of program mismanagement and partial compliance with statutorily mandated reporting. As such, the Inspector General is required to make a report to the Governor of South Carolina with these findings. Whether these rise to the level of misconduct beyond the scope of the Inspector General's purview and requires a secondary level of review by appropriate law enforcement or prosecuting authority per South Carolina Code 1-6-40. The Inspector General has now referred this report to SLED for further investigation, and he's had a meeting with the U.S. Attorney Brian Sterling, also given a report for further investigation. Mr. President, that's my report. It's online. You'll be able to take a look at it, and I'm sure much more will come out about the report. But the main thing I want this body to know is that you listen to the evidence, you listen to the nearly 2 years long investigation into our state's finances. You understood that multiple statutes were being violated, and you understood that we have to have confidence in our state's accounting system, and that the Treasurer of the state of South Carolina is not only has not been in compliance with state statutes, and by not following state statutes, was able to amass an account balance of $1.8 billion in unreconciled differences. He even said that he earned $200 million in interest on the money. The Inspector General's report goes on to say that he uncovered issues with our state's funds that go to Health and Human Services, and that there were some mistakes in the reporting there, and over-reporting caused there to be $65 million in interest that should have been sent to the general fund one particular year, and it was not, and now it's being made up in installments. In other words, if the treasurer were about the business of following state statutes and doing his jobs, our accounting and the ability for us to have confidence that the taxpayer dollars are being taken care of, we would have confidence in that, but we don't.
Senator from Pickens, what purpose do you rise, sir?
See if the senator will entertain a question.
Senator,
Senator, yield for questions.
This
Senator, yield for
report that is available, you say it's online. Will it be on the Senate finance reports where we have the other treasurer's reports?
I believe we'll be able to put it on the Finance Committee webpage.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator from Berkeley, Senator Grooms, for that report.